I was already inside my house when my doorbell camera recorded me coming home. At first I thought it was just some kind of glitch. Then I watched the footage again. The person outside was wearing my jacket. He was carrying a grocery bag. And when he reached my front door, he pulled out a key. My key. That's when I realized something. Someone wasn't trying to break into my house. Someone was trying to make it look like I was the one coming home. My name is Jack. I was 32 at the time, and I worked as an insurance claims adjuster in Charlotte, North Carolina. I lived alone in a 2-story townhouse in a pretty quiet neighborhood outside the city. It wasn't a bad neighborhood. Most people kept to themselves. There were families, young couples, and a lot of people who worked in Charlotte and commuted every day. My routine was pretty boring. I worked Monday through Friday. I usually got home around 6, made something easy for dinner, and spent the rest of the night watching TV. A few months before all this happened, someone stole a package from my front porch. So I installed a Ring doorbell camera. I didn't really think about it after that. Until one Thursday night. I had worked late that evening. Instead of going straight home, I stopped at a grocery store about 10 minutes from my townhouse. I picked up a few things for dinner, some bottled water, and a couple of snacks. I remember getting home around 9:40 p.m. I pulled into my driveway, grabbed the grocery bags, and walked inside. I locked the front door behind me. Then I put the groceries on the kitchen counter. I remember looking at the microwave clock. 9:43. I went upstairs, changed clothes, and came back down. About 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was a motion alert from my doorbell camera. Normally, I would have ignored it. But I noticed there was a video attached. I opened the app. Someone was walking up my driveway. At first, I figured it was a neighbor. Then the person stepped under the porch light. I stopped breathing for a second. It was me. Same dark gray jacket, same jeans, same shoes. He was even carrying a grocery bag in his left hand. I watched the video again. He walked up the driveway, stopped at my front door, put the grocery bag down. Then he reached into his jacket. I saw a key in his hand. My key. He put it into the lock and unlocked my front door. I immediately looked at the door in front of me. It was locked. I got up and checked the deadbolt, still locked. Then I looked back at the video. The timestamp said 10:07 p.m. I looked at the microwave. 10:08. I replayed the clip. Same thing. He walked toward my house, unlocked the door, and went inside. I called my friend Marcus. He lived about 15 minutes away. When he answered, I said, "Can you come over?" He laughed. "Why?" "I need you to look at something." "What happened?" "I don't know." That got his attention. He arrived about 20 minutes later. I showed him the video. He watched it once, then again. Finally, he looked at me. "That's you." "I know." "Did you come home twice?" "No." "Could it just be an old recording?" "Maybe." That was the first explanation we came up with, and honestly, I wanted it to be true. We checked the camera history. There were no other clips from that night. Nothing before 10:07, nothing after 10:08. Just that one video. Marcus went outside and checked the porch. The grocery bag from the video wasn't there. There were no footprints. Nothing looked damaged. The lock was fine. There was no sign that anyone had actually gotten inside. Before he left, Marcus said, "You should change the locks." I did it the next morning. I replaced the front door lock and the deadbolt. I also changed the garage code. For several days, nothing happened. Eventually, I started telling myself it was probably some kind of camera problem. Maybe the timestamp was wrong. Maybe the recording had been delayed. Maybe there was some technical explanation. Then about a week later, I got another motion alert. It was 11:18 p.m. I opened the video. There was a man standing across the street. He wasn't walking. He wasn't getting into a car. He was just standing there. The camera couldn't get a clear look at his face. He stood there for about 30 seconds. Then he walked away. I ignored it. 2 nights later, it happened again. Same man, same spot, same thing. Then it happened a third time. I went through the camera history. There were 6 recordings of him, always at night, always across the street. And that's when I noticed something. He only showed up on nights when I got home late. I called Marcus. We watched the videos together. He said, "Maybe he lives around here. I've never seen him before. That doesn't mean he doesn't. I think he's watching my house." Marcus looked at me for a moment. "Are you sure?" "No." That was the problem. I wasn't sure. Everything still had a reasonable explanation. Maybe he lived nearby. Maybe he was waiting for someone. Maybe he was just walking around the neighborhood. I didn't want to turn something ordinary into something dangerous. Then I noticed my side gate was open. I always kept it closed. I shut it and locked it. 3 days later, it was open again. There was no recording of anyone opening it. So I bought a small security camera and pointed it toward the side yard. For almost a week, nothing happened. Then at 3:12 in the morning, my phone buzzed. Motion detected. I opened the video. Someone was entering through my side gate. He walked toward my garage, stopped, looked around, then walked back out. He never touched the house, but he had entered my property. I called the police. An officer came by that morning. I showed him the footage. He asked if anything was missing. I said no. He asked if I knew anyone who might have a reason to bother me. Again, no. He told me to keep the cameras running and call immediately if someone actually entered the house. I understood. There wasn't much else he could do. For the next few days, I changed my routine. I stopped going straight home after work. Sometimes I'd sit at a coffee shop for half an hour. Sometimes I'd drive around before going home. Sometimes I'd arrive much earlier than usual. The man across the street stopped appearing. And strangely, that made me more nervous, because it made me wonder if he had noticed, if he was watching my routine. Maybe he had noticed that I was changing it. And if that was true, I wasn't sure what I was dealing with anymore. Then, on a Friday night, I came home earlier than usual, and this time I didn't check the camera before going inside. I wish I had. Because 7 minutes after I walked through my front door, my phone buzzed. Motion detected. The thumbnail showed someone walking up my driveway, and he was wearing my jacket. I stared at the notification for several seconds. I was standing in my kitchen. The front door was locked, and someone wearing my jacket was walking toward my house. I opened the video. The timestamp said 8:37 p.m. I had arrived home at 8:30. I knew that because I had stopped for gas on the way home, and I had checked the time when I pulled into my driveway. The person on the video looked exactly like me. Same height, same build, same gray jacket. He walked up the driveway without hesitation. He stopped at the front door. Then he looked directly at the camera. I felt my stomach drop. He didn't cover his face. He didn't seem worried about being recorded. He just stood there for a second. Then he reached toward the door. I immediately called 911. I didn't go upstairs. I didn't check the house. I stayed in the kitchen with the front door locked. The police arrived within a few minutes. 2 officers entered the house and searched every room. They checked the upstairs bedrooms, the bathrooms, the closets, the garage, the backyard. Nobody was there. Nothing appeared to be missing. There were no broken windows, no damaged locks, no obvious way anyone could have gotten inside. One of the officers asked me to show him the doorbell recording. I did. He watched it twice. Then he said, "Your camera may have delayed the upload." I said, "Why, but it says 8:37. He nodded. That doesn't necessarily mean the camera recorded it at exactly 8:37. That explanation was possible. But something about the footage still bothered me. I opened another camera, the one facing my driveway. That camera had recorded me arriving at 8:30. It showed me getting out of my car, walking toward the front door, and going inside. My jacket was zipped up. Then I opened the doorbell recording again. The person appearing at 8:37 was wearing the same jacket, but the zipper was open. I pointed it out to the officer. He watched both recordings. Then he asked, "Do you have another key?" I said I had one spare. "Where?" "In my office." He looked at me. "Who has access to it?" "Just me." I thought about that for a second, then I remembered something. About 2 months earlier, I had lost my house key for a few days. I eventually found it underneath the driver's seat of my car. I hadn't thought much about it. Now I couldn't stop thinking about it. The officer asked if I had changed the locks since then. I told him yes. He said, "Wait, then whoever had the old key shouldn't be able to get in." Shouldn't. That word stayed with me. The officers left around 9:30. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I replaced the locks again. This time, I hired a locksmith instead of doing it myself. I also installed another camera inside the house. For the next week, nothing happened. No man across the street. No one entering the side gate. No strange motion alerts. I started to relax. Then I came home one Friday evening and found a grocery bag sitting on my porch. I hadn't ordered anything. There was no delivery notification. I opened the bag. Inside was a bottle of water, a loaf of bread, and a bag of the same chips I had bought the night of the first video. I just stood there looking at it. I didn't touch anything else. I called the police again. They took the bag. There was no receipt, no note, nothing that could tell us where it came from. That was the point where I decided I was done. I stayed at Marcus's house that weekend. On Monday, I contacted my landlord. I explained what had been happening. He didn't ask many questions. He just said, "If you want to terminate the lease, we'll work something out." I moved out 2 weeks later. I didn't take much with me. I left most of the furniture behind. I just wanted to be somewhere else. A few days after I moved, I opened the Ring app one last time. I still had access to the old camera. There was one recording I hadn't seen. It had been captured the night before I moved out. The timestamp was 2:14 a.m. The camera showed my front porch. Nothing happened for several seconds. Then someone stepped into frame. It was the same man. He walked toward the door, stopped, and looked directly into the camera. This time, he wasn't wearing my jacket. He was wearing a black hoodie. He reached into his pocket. For a moment, I thought he was going to pull out a key. Instead, he pulled out his phone. He looked at the screen. Then he looked at the camera and walked away. I never found out what he was looking at on that phone. I never found out who he was. I never found out why he knew my schedule. I never found out how he knew what jacket I was wearing. And I never found out how someone managed to make it look like I was coming home when I was already inside. I changed my phone number after I moved. I changed my email passwords. I even deleted most of my social media accounts. Nothing else happened. At least nothing I could prove. About 6 months later, I was going through an old hard drive and found the original Doorbell video. I watched it again. The first recording. The one from 10:07. The person walked up the driveway. He put the grocery bag down. Then he reached into his jacket. He took out a key and unlocked my front door. I had watched that video dozens of times, but that night, I noticed something I'd completely missed. The grocery bag he put on the porch wasn't the same bag I had brought home. Mine was a white plastic bag with blue lettering. The one in the video was plain brown paper. I paused the video, and I zoomed in. There was something written on the side of the bag. Just 4 numbers. My house number. I still don't know who wrote them there. I don't know how long that person had been watching me. And I don't know what would have happened if I had opened that front door at 10:07. But there's one thing I still think about. That person wasn't trying to break into my house. He had a key. And he wasn't pretending to be me for the camera. He was pretending to be me for whoever might be watching. I never found out who was on the other side of that plan. And honestly, that's the part that still bothers me the most.